my biggest focus nowadays is just trying to help people realize just eat real whole foods. You will feel so much better.
My guest today is Lillie Kane, who really needs no introduction. Lillie is a health coach. She's very popular on YouTube. And we're here just to talk about whatever, obviously with a little bit of a slant towards the carnivore diet, but we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff today. Welcome to the show, Lillie.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Great. No, I've been excited about this for a couple of weeks, actually. So I guess just for those people who may not know about you, which I find hard to believe, but just in case they don't, could you just give us a little general intro about who you are, what life was growing up for you, and what you typically ate, which I guess that could take a while.
I grew up in San Diego, California, and my mom and dad met out of their shared addiction for drugs and alcohol. And my dad ended up leaving and just kind of disappearing when I was pretty young. So my mom was a single parent who raised my sister and I, and she had a hard time keeping a job because of her addiction to alcohol. So we lived on food stamps. We were very low income, and we would grocery shop at the 99-cent store. And so we just had a lot of processed foods, top ramen, peanut butter jelly sandwiches, hot dogs. I would eat frozen peas just straight out of the freezer. I don't know. That was one of my things. Frozen peas and raw hot dogs. I wouldn't even cook the hot dog. And then I was underdeveloped, I suppose, because I just didn't have enough nutrients and I didn't have enough fuel and enough food. And so I'm a little bit shorter than the average lady. My jaw was very narrow. I had to have a retainer that opened up my jaw. I had headgear, braces, rubber bands, teeth pulled, all sorts of cavities, all the things that go into someone who was eating mostly just sugar and then just not enough nutrients in general. I was a late bloomer too, so I had a late menstrual cycle, didn't develop breasts or become a woman until everyone else in my circle growing up had already gone through puberty and all of that. So I wasn't really taught anything about health and nutrition. And then when I went to college, it was the first time I was exposed to all-you-can-eat buffet. And so I gained 15 pounds my freshman year. And I was really happy about it because I was always teased for being chicken legs, toothpick, flat chest, small little pip. So I thought that a man liked ladies with curves and who were thicker. And I so desperately wanted a man to love me because I just didn't have enough love growing up as a child. This is all things I've learned in hindsight now that I've grown up and matured more. But at the time, I didn't realize. I would thought, I just want a boyfriend because that's what other people want. But it wasn't just I want a boyfriend. It was like a very desperate, can't be alone. Like I really had a hard time not having some sort of interaction with a male going on because being single Lillie was just not comfortable. So that's what I kind of grew up eating. Lots of processed foods, went to college, had access to more processed foods. And I was lucky that I did run track and field all 4 years because at least from a weight perspective, I didn't gain a ton of fat, but I still was having UTIs, yeast infections, acne, joint pain, all sorts of mental health issues, eating a bunch of processed foods still that I just thought, okay, well, this is normal. This is what everybody else is eating. And so that's kind of where my processed food journey ended after I graduated college and then met my husband.
And so your husband, I kind of know the answer to this question, but he had a big impact on your food choices from when you met. So tell us more about that.
So he never said, Lillie, you have to eat like me. So I just want to put it out there that no, he was never like, you need to change for me. He was just really good at being an awesome role model and person to be around. They say the 5 people you surround yourself around most create who you are. And so once I graduated college, ended up getting a job where he was my boss. And I remember our first date, he said he would take me out to get ice cream, which I thought like we were really going to eat ice cream. Like people go out and they eat ice cream. And he instead took me to the grocery store to get a pint of ice cream. And I was like, why is he not getting like the big jar, like the big thing of tub of ice cream? And he didn't eat any of it. It was just me eating this ice cream by myself. And then I just eventually, through being around him, started asking more questions. Well, why don't you have chips? Why don't you drink alcohol? Why don't you have pizza? Why don't you eat a tomato? Like there were so many things where he had all these in my head rules that I thought he was so strict and so particular and he needed to relax and loosen up a bit. So I would take Oreos and soak them in funfetti cake batter and fry them in canola oil and try to feed him, saying like, you're missing out on life, dude. You need to like live a little bit and enjoy these things. And he's 9 years older than me. So he had already had experience with doing a vegan diet, a fruitarian diet, the Mediterranean diet, paleo, vegetarian. He did all the different diets before he had met me, that he had a better understanding of what worked for him. But then I was able to sneak in the junkies with him sometimes. And eventually I started kind of destroying his health a little bit, where he was like, hey, I'm getting these spots on my skin. I'm getting irritation and itchiness and bad stool movements. And I'm having digestion issues and toenail fungus. And all these things are happening to my health, Lillie, because I'm having some burritos and pizza and chips with you sometimes. And that's not going over very well with my health. So he slowly started changing his diet back to a ketogenic diet, which was one that had helped him heal his gut issues originally after he had done a plant-based diet for several years. And so once he did keto, I started asking even more questions. Why aren't you having bread? Why aren't you having rice? And just slowly, I just started adopting certain things that he was doing, because he looks really great for his age. He's energetic, he's youthful, and I was just really inspired that he didn't need to have dessert or sugar to be happy.
Well, I find it's interesting because he was like, I say to people, be the lighthouse, not the foghorn. So he really was the lighthouse, wasn't he? He never tried to convince you of otherwise, but it was just his own example and his own health that actually then compelled you to go, okay, there's something more to this than what meets the eye.
Yep. And at this point, I've been on YouTube and social media for a few years, and even my family and my friends, like, they don't ask me questions. They don't want to know about it. They don't want to hear about how to eat healthy. Until just this past month, I finally had someone in my family reach out and they're like, Lillie, I want to lose weight. Like, can you help me? And it's been so fun, because actually a lot of the YouTube videos I've been creating this past month have been because of the questions I've been getting from this family member. And they've been doing really well with the general public as well. Because I think sometimes if you were to say, like, you have to be a full-blown carnivore, you have to go keto, it's pretty off-putting to certain people. And I don't think people have to do that to be healthy either. So with my family member, and what I'm trying to loop around to is that I've just kept being the example, because I found that when I tried to force my diet down other people, it didn't work very well. So just keep being a happy, good person. And then people come around and say, what are you doing? And that's what I did with my husband as well. That got me intrigued with what he was doing and how to then better myself.
I think it was with my wife, actually. I was very enthusiastic, and I quickly learned what you just learned, was that if somebody's not ready to hear it, they're just not going to hear it, and there's really no point. And still to this day, no one in my family actually eats the way I do, which is it's just carnivore. But everybody is interested in eating more meat, which I consider that to be a win. It's like, okay, well, yeah. And now I'm like the go-to guy for meat. Oh, we need some, can you make sure you cook some meat dishes for us, Rod? Like if there's a family gathering or something like that. So I'm cool with that. But yeah, nobody actually asked any questions. It was only actually, I've only been like 4 or 5 months, but it was only just recently that my mother-in-law, who is like a terrific cook, actually specifically said, oh, why are you actually doing this for Rod? And I said, and how come you haven't told us anything about it much? And I said, well, nobody's really asked me about it so far, Daisy. But it's great that you've got a family member that's actually genuinely interested in and wants to do something with their health, because that's really all what it's all about, right? It's just people getting their health better than eating a certain way.
Right. Well, and I think just saying, like, I think the biggest thing people could do to better their health is just not eat the processed foods. You want to have a big salad and fruit and potatoes and rice and bread. I mean, I don't know, bread can be fine, but I just mean like really processed foods like chips and pizzas and tacos and burritos and alcohol and candies and donuts, and all those things are just so toxic, and they're not necessary for a good life. So that's I think my biggest focus nowadays is just trying to help people realize, just eat real whole foods. You will feel so much better. Your life will improve. And it sounds like woo-woo, because people are like, well, my life's fine. People don't realize they have little aches, little pains, thoughts that they have, maybe even depressive thoughts, anxious thoughts that could slowly just start disappearing more when they don't have their brain altered with these toxic ingredients that alter our brain chemistry and impact our mood.
Yeah, that's a hard one to swallow for some people, isn't it? The idea that what we're eating is actually related to not just what we see on the outside, but what's going on in our minds and our brains, and how we're sleeping, all that sort of stuff. I don't think it's that difficult for people to sort of say, okay, well, I want to lose weight, and this seems a pretty good way to do it. But then those other things, like to do with mental health and depression and all those sort of things, that there's not a connection made there. And I think we're still so severely short of education and how our mental health relates to diet at this stage.
Yeah. And I think, like you had even mentioned, like with weight loss, that's why my family members coming to me originally is for weight loss. But I will say things like, well, who cares if you can lose weight eating XYZ thing? Because I can help you lose weight eating anything you want to eat. But is it going to make you feel good? Because what's the point of losing the weight? The point of losing the weight is hopefully just not for aesthetic purposes, because once you lose the weight, I promise you, you're going to want to change your nose, change your hair color. There's going to be something else about your physical appearance that you're going to want to change. So why don't we want to just feel good? I have so much weight on me that it hurts to stand up, or my knees hurt, or sleeping is not, I'm not sleeping as good because I have all this extra added weight on me. So I like focusing, somebody saying they want to lose weight for vanity purposes to I want to lose weight because I just want to feel really good. And when that is the focus, then I think you just start asking yourself, okay, well, if I eat the Oreo, is that going to help me with that goal of feeling good? Because then I'm not going to have it.
Yeah. So initially when you met your husband, and then after a period of time, you started going down the keto path. Once you started making that change to your diet, how did things change with your health, and how has what you're eating evolved since then?
So my small little aches and pains, because I was never severely overweight or had a list of autoimmune conditions or mental health issues that I even knew about at the time. Now hindsight's 2020. I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely had more mood swings and irritability and depressive thoughts, but I ended up losing weight. I ended up having a lot of joint pain and my knees disappear. And I had less acne and yeast infections and reproductive issues, and all my smell, just not having to have deodorant or have to, I mean, I brush my teeth because I just like doing it, but certain things about when you eat junk, you kind of smell like junk, but when you eat good whole foods, then you smell like a good whole person. And I'm a happy person too. I smile a lot, but I think that's just, so lots of minor little and not getting sick is another thing too, because I used to get sick 3-4 times a year. Stuffy nose, the cough, the sore throat, just a normal cold that everybody gets, because that's what happens in life. You get a cold. No, I don't get colds anymore. For 4 or 5 years, I haven't gotten sick, even during the pandemic. So I think that just makes me feel kind of invincible in a way, where like when I was during the COVID times, there were people in my family saying, oh, you shouldn't go to that water park. You shouldn't go to the amusement parks. You shouldn't fly in the airplanes. I'm like, trust me, I'm not worried. And to have like that ability to be like, no, I'm confident that even if I were to get sick, I'm going to bounce back very quickly. And then the other thing being like having my brain back in terms of when I would go to the grocery store, I would look and say, oh, the Reese's peanut butter cup, lighting up my brain. I need to eat the Reese's peanut butter cup and the Lucky Charms and the Doritos chips, because those things are intentionally a certain color and they have a certain memory and they have the crunch sound and they have all these things perfectly structured because they know people are going to be wanting to buy it again and give them more of their money, which, you know, we work so hard for our money. To think I'm going to give my money to something that's not going to actually give any true health to me, it's going to give me a temporary yum in my mouth for like 5 seconds, when I can eat something else that will have the same taste of deliciousness, but then help my brain and help my body and help my mood. And so I think not having the processed foods makes me feel like I have my life back, in terms of I have my brain back, where when I go to the grocery store, I'm making choices because I want those things, not because some other company, corporation, advertisement is manipulating me into wanting it. I'm actually just choosing this because I want to have this for myself, not because I'm having an addiction or some sort of stimulus that's making me want something that's not good for me.
Yeah, there's a lot of freedom, isn't there? I didn't realize how I was tied to, I needed to have like that little tub of ice cream after I finished work, or I needed to have like those extra 2 slices of cake instead of just the one. I didn't realize how out of control I was, or maybe it controlled me, not the other way around. Now it's like it's a very deliberate choice. If I'm going to eat something, it's not because I need it anymore, which is really cool.
I've heard the sugar addiction, carb addiction. I always thought, no, I don't have an addiction. That's extreme. I don't have that at all. I could stop tomorrow. It's not that easy. And the hard part too is that it is a part of our society where when you go to the grocery store, you're at a friend's party, a work event, if you go to even the hospitals and the vending machines, it's filled with all this stuff. And so they make it really, really hard for you to not have it. And then you're the weirdo if you don't have it as well, or you're the party pooper. And so just the whole way in which our society and culture is set up, it's like to eat those things, it's tough. And I don't think that people have to never eat those things ever again. I'm not going to argue that they are going to give you more health, but I do think that it's just a little bit out of control for most people. They don't realize having an Eggo waffle for breakfast and then having the Starbucks caramel frappo, all the things that they go and they just have mindlessly adds up to a ton of sugar and a ton of added chemicals and toxic ingredients.
Did you have to like completely abstain from sweet things, high processed carbohydrate things for a period of time before you felt like you were able to choose powerfully rather than it being in control of you?
So I had watched a lot of Dr. Gundry, who's more of the lectin guy, who talks a lot about the plant paradox. You don't want to eat too many plants because they have these things called lectins. Meanwhile, he's not talking about like oxalates or phytic acid or the other plant toxins. So people are avoiding these high lectin foods and meanwhile eating all these other foods that may have higher plant toxins in different. They're avoiding the lectins and instead having a different plant toxin in a high amount. Anyway, I was listening to lots of Dr. Gundry and he was talking about how fruit is like candy. So he was comparing like a banana to a Snickers bar or like a handful of grapes to Oreos. And I was like, what? There's that much sugar in it? And that was like my first aha moment that there's sugar in fruit. Who would have thought? And then, like I said, I grew up with the wolves. Nobody taught me these things with my parents. And so then I was like, okay, well, this is pretty backwards thinking, but I thought I'm not going to give up having cookies and Oreos and dessert. So instead, I'm going to give up having fruit first. And then if I can make it a month without fruit, then I'm going to try to have no actual dessert. So I did that. I didn't have any fruit. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to try to do 30 days of no dessert whatsoever. And I did it and I survived. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should win an award. I can't believe I just did that. I'm a superhuman. So once I did the 30 days no dessert, I was like, well, I guess I don't need it anymore. So I just never went back. And to this day, I have learned new things and I've shifted and evolved my thinking more. And so I do have a dessert, which to most people is probably really boring, but I will have some yogurt and a piece of fruit. And that's my form of dessert. And that's my sweet treat that just gives me, I don't know, normalcy, but also just like a nice thing to end on at the end of the day.
And how about anything that's artificially sweetened? Because I went through my transition phase was, okay, I'll take anything out with sugar, and I eliminated fruits and vegetables for a period of time to see how I'd react. But then I kept in anything that was artificially sweetened because in my mind I thought, well, that's cool, right? There's no additional calories there. Surely that's all right to do that. But it wasn't until I got rid of the artificially sweetened things, anything sweet, where I was able to get released from that need or that addiction or whatever you like to call it. And then my taste buds started changing. Other things that I consider to be a little bit sort of average or bland or boring, like meat and other things, tasted way different and way more interesting.
Yeah, I never really did the artificial sweeteners too much in general, but then once I did my meat only things, then I did bring in artificial sweeteners. So I don't know, I guess I did it backwards.
But it's not a problem for you. Like you can sort of take it or leave it as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's another good example of how everybody's different. You just got to find out what works for you. So tell me about your relationship with food, because this is an idea that I really had no clue about. But everyone has a relationship with food, whether they think they do or not. And how has your relationship with food evolved over time?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you, Rod. I need to be better at being present and in the moment. That is one of the things that I really struggle with, is I am very go, 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 busy, on to the next thing, that honestly, I think people, when they see that I eat very similarly every single day, I'm like, I eat ground beef, I eat butter, I eat cheese. Like, it's very much the same thing. They're like, don't you get bored of eating the same thing? And the answer is no, because unfortunately, bad habit, don't learn from me on this one. I am very not present with when I'm eating. I am like distracted thinking about the next thing. That to me, eating is just like a thing I need to do to like fuel my body. And after that, like I'm moving on to the next thing. Certain people, they eat as in like, oh, it's bringing me so much joy and happiness, and it's like an event. And for me, it's like, it's just a thing I got to do off the checklist. So I need to get better about being present with my food. And I do think that honestly, sometimes in the carnivore space or the vegan space or any kind of diet niche where people think there are rules, which there are for each of the diets, but I think that can, for certain people, cause more mental health issues or even fear around food, where they're like, I can't eat broccoli because if I eat broccoli, then tomorrow I'm going to be dead. And I'm like, well, that's not my relationship with food. My relationship with food is we can derive nutrients from even a donut. Not the same, going to give you the same feeling, but if you were starving and you had no food whatsoever and you're in the middle of a deserted island and the only thing you had access to was a donut, it's going to keep you alive longer than not eating. debatable. But in general, I just think any real whole food is going to add nutrition and can be healthy for people. It just depends on which whole foods and how much and how often. And so, yeah, my relationship with food seems pretty relaxed and freeing, but maybe not having processed foods makes me boring.
I can relate to this idea because my wife April, she like, and her mum, so my mother-in-law is exactly the same. They get some sort of joy out of cooking and eating, and just their faces are like, oh my God, what is going on over there? But exactly like you, to me, it's fuel, but it's not boring for me now either. So like yesterday, I just want to get it done. So I made this great big batch of burgers, and I was sitting there going, the average person is going to think this is a really boring meal. But for me, this is perfect. This is like, I cooked it quickly. It's really nutritious. It tastes great. I feel great. It's like, why can't I eat like this? I'm going to eat like this. It should be okay to do that. But it's okay. Other people have different experiences with the way they eat food too.
I think it depends on the kind of ground beef too, because I've had some ground beef, which is nasty, but mine is like so delicious and tasty that I'm like, I don't know who wouldn't want to eat this. It's like, it is so good, every single bite. And you add some salt, it's like, oh amazing.
Yeah, I'm still not getting sick of it. And I like keep experimenting. It's like, okay, how much oil can I put in the pan? And does that change the way the ground beef is? And sure enough, it makes it a little bit better. We have this crazy five-star system for meat in Australia. So 5 stars is really good, but it's also really low fat. And so I get the 3-star one, right? The unhealthy one. That's the best one. It's so good. Can't get enough of it. So I have another question here. Has there been anything good or bad about your experience with switching your diet that you could change if you could go back and do it again?
Well, I think everything that I have done was a learning lesson, and everything has helped me get to where I am today. So I don't know if I would have changed anything with what I personally did off camera, but on camera, I think I would have done things differently. I think I'm doing a better job now explaining that different foods have different nutrients, and some are easier to pull out of foods than others, and some are going to hurt you, or some foods may have nutrients, but they might not serve you as much, or they might give you a reaction or cause your eczema or your psoriasis to flare up. They may cause you to have a binge eating tendency. So I think I'm doing a better job communicating now that let's not demonize foods. Let's just figure out, okay, like which ones are going to be most nutritious for you. Versus in the beginning, I was saying more like, oh, I eat a carnivore diet. And then it got people thinking that I therefore thought that eating mustard was dangerous, or therefore having coffee means you're a bad person, and I don't want that messaging to be there. So I think I would have changed using the word carnivore, because I think that sometimes it creates more rules or limitations too, and puts me in a box that makes me feel like I can't help people in the way in which I want to help people. So I think I would have just changed saying carnivore.
Now, I haven't gone back over a lot of your older content, but is talking about food and what you eat and how that impacts your health, has that always been part of your sort of social media journey, or is it something that you introduced more recently?
My first YouTube video was my story, but I redid it. So that's the one that you saw. And then after that, I did arts and crafts. So I was making wreaths and candles, and I wanted to give away these different crafts that I was making. And I did that for a little bit, but it didn't really take off. And I just started learning more about YouTube and started playing around with different ideas, like what to get someone for Valentine's Day, what's trending in 2023, what I eat in a day. And when I posted that what I eat in a day video, it popped off, went viral. And I got so many questions like, well, why can't you have tea? Or why don't you eat seasonings? Or why don't you have pork belly? So it was just, I started making content around the questions that I was getting, and then it turned into food. So none of the old content exists. I deleted it. It was terrible. You're not missing out on anything.
You didn't just
So
private it so we could have a look later? If you ever change your mind, you just deleted it.
Yeah. I have everything on my thumb drives, but I don't want people to see it.
That would be entertaining for sure. So what's your favorite meal?
My favorite meal is rack of lamb. With
lamb.
Bacon and butter and, well, an avocado.
Now, are you usually the person who cooks, or does your husband like to cook, or do you share? How does that work?
I'm very lucky that my husband does all of the cooking.
How good's that?
Not for a lack of me not liking to cook. It's that I'm just very busy with my work, and it's the best way that he supports us.
Yeah. And he enjoys cooking, I think the person who enjoys it, it's easy to sort of take that role because, hey, like it's not really work then, is it? If you enjoy doing it.
Yes, and he's very much OCD. So he likes his things in particular ways, particular orders. And so it's better this way that he gets to have control over how much we cook a lot of our meat together too. So he wants to make sure he's getting a certain amount and that it's not like he's accidentally putting too much on my plate and he's not getting all the protein he needs. So yeah, it works out.
And is there anything that you used to eat a lot of that you're like, oh, I'm just so bored with it, I'm not eating it anymore?
Ironically, I did get tired of eating butter and it was kind of grossing me out and I was like not into butter. So I stopped having butter for 2 months. I just brought it back in a couple weeks ago and I'm like, oh, butter is so delicious. Why did I stop having it? But so I think that's just kind of like most people, they're probably going to have seasons where they are like obsessed with something and then they overdo it. So they take a break from it. And then if they really like it, they'll come back. But yeah, I would say probably, well, and that happened to me with sardines and that happened to me with eggs. So I do go through spurts with a lot of things where I'm like really loving it, having too much of it and then overdoing it and then causing myself an issue sometimes and then reverting back to more of a balanced amount of butter and balanced amount of sardines versus sardines every single day.
Yeah, I always say to people, people ask me what my favorite food is, I say bacon, eggs, like straight away. And I've had it like straight for 130, 40 days or something like that. And I just can't see myself ever getting sick of it. And there isn't any food that I'm yet sick of, but there's some that have gone by the wayside. Sardines is one of them. Used to eat them, one of those every day. And now they're just not interesting because the other food that I've got access to just is more interesting. So it's like, sorry, sardines. Our relationship is over. So,
for now.
For now, yeah. So what do you find working with people as a health coach? What do you find is the biggest pitfall that people run into when they start, especially if they're going more keto or carnivore?
Undereating for sure, because I think the foods are very nutrient dense, protein heavy and satiating, that a lot of people, they get full off a small amount of food, which I'd rather someone get full off a small amount of food versus off of a lot of processed foods, but it's still not enough. Some people, they come to me and they're eating like 2 eggs and a sausage in the whole entire day and they're like, I'm stuffed. And even though eggs and meat have a lot of vitamins and minerals in them, if you're eating this much of them, you're not getting enough choline, you're not getting enough magnesium, you're not getting enough selenium, you're not getting enough of the vitamins and minerals. So it's something I teach a lot is reverse dieting, because even especially for women, they do a lot of different diets where they're eating 1,200 calories and not losing weight, and they come eating a meat-based diet, they're eating 1,000, and that's not going to help their thyroid, their hormones, their health, their energy, their sleep, all the things that your body needs, nutrients. And so reverse dieting is a big thing I talk about with coaching clients, and undereating is a big pitfall I see with a lot of people when they come to a keto or carnivore animal-based way of eating.
And how about when people just fall off the wagon? What do you find is the most common reasons for people to not be successful with changing their diet over?
They have friends. So I think like go social events, work events, it's just they don't, or if they're traveling, like, oh, I couldn't do it because I was traveling. Like they didn't have chicken on the menu. There wasn't a steak. There wasn't burger patties. You couldn't just take the buns off. But I think that there's more to eating sometimes than just pulling nutrients from food. And it's a social thing, a cultural thing. And so it can be like peer pressure and just being around other people and wanting to please other people sometimes. And then also when I look at the cookies at the bakery, or you go to your grocery store and they have all the glistening, beautiful desserts and pastries, it's tempting. So I think if you're especially then sitting next to somebody who's eating it, it's going to be like, well, what the heck am I doing? They're living their life. They're healthy still. They're skinny still. Or what, you just start comparing and you're like, well, I'm going to do that then because it's easy.
I had one of my clients who was very similar. So he'd been studying the carnivore diet for like years, but every time he went out with his mates to go and watch football or something like that, he'd end up drinking 7 or 8 beers and having the hot dogs and all the rest of it. And his question was like, how do I deal with this? What do I do about that? And it was a difficult one for me to answer. So yeah, I'm interested in how do you help coach people through dealing with social situations and the pressure that goes along with that?
Well, it's a case by case, because certain people, like even for myself, during Christmas time, we'll go out with our friends and we'll have a glass of wine. And so like we drink one time a year, and that's not healthy. I'm going to be honest. So I think that there can be balance. That to me is like, it just depends on what people's goals are. My goal is to live my longest, healthiest, best quality life. And I don't think that me eating off plan a couple nights of each week is going to help me get to that goal where I can stand up out of my chair when I'm a certain age and I don't need someone's help, and I can carry boxes and I can rock climb and I can go travel the world and do all the things that I want to do when I'm older. And I don't think people think about their future self as much, and they're thinking about the present, this Lillie today. And I want future Lillie to say, hey, I look back on younger Lillie and say, hey, good job, girl, you did it. You helped the team. And so a lot of people like instant gratification. What is it doing for me now? I'm getting bliss out of eating this food now. So one of the things that I suggest people to do is when they're out in social events, well, how often is it happening? Because you can get away with some things, but I don't think you owe anybody an explanation, and your real friends and family are going to understand what you're doing. And oftentimes people aren't even watching what you're eating. So I personally, when I order food, I just have it come with the mashed potatoes and gravy and the this and that and the others. And if I don't eat it, I just push it to the side and nobody notices. I know some people, they're more particular and like, nope, I'm just getting the steak and it can't have anything else on it. And if that works for other people, awesome. For me, I try to make it a little bit more relaxed in the situation and then just push the things off to the side. And nobody notices and nobody cares. And if they do have a remark, then okay, let's talk about it in a civil way. But if you're around the right kind of people, they will support you with what you're doing. And so you might burn some bridges, okay? So that's what I did. And trust me, there were quite some friends who are not a part of the picture anymore, but they're not your real friends or your true friends if they can't support you just eating what you want to eat, because you're supporting them eating whatever they want to eat too. I think as long as you're not putting other people down, then it's an easier social event situation. And otherwise, if someone's having a moment and they need help with what they're not having processed foods, I say to grab a pen and a paper or take your cell phone out. And when you reach for the cookies at work, when you reach for the little bowl of candy or whatnot, write down why. I did it because I was anxious. Okay, next time, what can I do to fulfill my anxiousness? Or I did it because I was bored, because I was stressed, because it was a social event and I felt peer pressured. I did it because it looked pretty, because I was hungry. Write down why it is that you're doing what you're doing, and then you'll keep a list and you'll start noticing a trend. Bored, stressed, bored, anxious, bored, peer pressure. Okay, well, I got to find me a new hobby because I get bored quite often and I'm resorting to food. So I think it keeps people accountable if they say, okay, fine, I can have it. I'm an adult. I get to choose what I want to eat, but I'm going to write down why I did it. And then I'm going to try to uncover the real reason as to why I'm eating the food, because oftentimes it's not because I'm so hungry that we're reaching for those goodies. And so sometimes it's childhood trauma I got to work on, or I got to create new habits when I'm having stressful moments. So I think there's a lot more going on with the social situations as well. Like, why do I feel like I have to impress other people? Why do I feel like I need to be doing what everybody else is doing? So yeah, it starts getting real deep.
I like deep. Speaking of childhood trauma, so some people, and I know you're no exception to this, didn't have the greatest childhood growing up, and food is like an emotional savior for people that have had difficult situations in their life. Did you find that you were relying on food in that way, and how did you, after you took away things that were sweet and arguably kind of like satisfied that part of your brain, how did you deal with that? How did things evolve for you there?
So when I was a child, I didn't have any money. So unfortunately, I couldn't go towards when I have sweet treats and things, because I just got to eat whatever was in the house. So my childhood trauma and things that I was coping with stress and anxiousness at that time was just being busy doing other things. So I involved myself in the church, and I was in theater and volleyball and photography and track. And I was just in all these different extracurricular activities that were positive. So it just happened to work out that way. That was really convenient. And then when I went to college, I did have moments where I was stressed, and so I would eat the sweet treats and whatnot. But again, I think environment is a big part of why people eat the foods that they eat. And so once you just get it out of the house, get it out of your face, get it out of your space, it's much easier to not have those things, because how are you going to have them if they're not readily available? So when I slowly stopped having sugar, ways that I started coping with stress, well, you start having less stress and less anxiety when you start having less sugar, at least in my experience and a lot of people's experiences. But nowadays I will journal, I'll read, I will massage with my husband, I'll call a friend, call a family member, or take a walk. I like getting outside and being outdoors or going to the gym.
So how important is it that people exercise if they're switching their diet, whether they're wanting to lose weight or just be healthier? What's your view there?
I think the word exercise is intimidating to some people because they think that means you have to go to the gym and you have to be flipping tires. And when I say exercise, I mean like I'm gardening, I'm doing yard work, I'm shoveling horse poop, I'm taking a walk, I'm doing the aerobics class, I'm swimming. So there's so many ways that people can get body movement. And I think that that is really, it's a very human thing to move. And I think that if your goal for switching your diet is because you want to be healthy, well, movement is going to be a part of that equation too. Now, I understand some people, it's like overwhelming. They're like, I got to fix my sleep. I got to fix my social life. I got to fix my food. I got to fix my exercise. It's too much. Let's just work on one thing. Okay, cool. Let's just stop having processed foods. But I do think that body movement is definitely a part of the equation into being healthy and to feeling good and to coping with, again, depression, anxiety, stress, getting better sleep. There's so many good functions for movement, for your brain, for your heart, for your digestion. So to me, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Awesome. So people are going to want to get in touch with you after seeing this interview. So just tell us everything you've got going on as far as your coaching programs, what have you, and what the best way is for people to get in touch with you if they want to.
So I try to provide as much free content online on YouTube. So I try to look through the comments and see what people's questions are and make videos around the questions I've been getting. So YouTube, Lillie Kane, Instagram, Lillie Kane, TikTok, Lillie Kane, Facebook, Lillie Kane. I've got an email, and then I have my coaching services, which I do one-on-one coaching calls. So I can really, let's not do the carnivore diet. Let's not do the vegan diet. Let's not do the keto diet. Let's do the Rod diet, the Lillie diet, the Sarah diet. Who are you? Let's figure out what's your work-life schedule, your lifestyle, your social life. Let's figure out all the pieces and make something that's realistic, that you're going to enjoy, that's going to make you happy, and you're going to sustain for a lifetime.
And is there anything final that you would like to leave people with? Something that's some sort of message that you want before we finish up?
I think something that's not spoken about in the health space that is important, I think, too, is community. So again, that's calling your friends, calling your family, being around them, or if you feel like there's nobody in your life right now who's helping support you or making you feel good, then there's plenty of people online, on YouTube, on Instagram, all over the place, for just putting people in your face, in your space, in your ears, in your eyes that are positive. Nowadays, we have the news on. We've got everything around us is kind of stimulating more negativity. So find those people who are going to lift you up and boost your spirits, because I think smiling is something that can actually give more health to people than we take credit for.
You're a great example of smiling and positivity, Lillie. So I think you do that without even trying, and that's what brings a lot of people to you. Look, I really appreciate you coming on to my show today. I thank you very much for your time, and good luck with everything in the future as well.
Thank you so much. Good luck to you too.